I was stationed at a mountain outpost so remote our supply drops came by drone. The valley below us was always covered in fog, thick enough to swallow sound. Locals said something lived in it. They called them the Mist Walkers. When I arrived, my CO handed me a laminated sheet, 8 rules, no explanation. Rule 3 caught my eye. If you see a silhouette standing still, don't blink. At first, I thought it was a joke from the last unit, but then we started losing patrols. Men would step into the fog and vanish mid-transmission, and when I got lost down there during a rescue op, I learned every rule was written in blood. When I first arrived at Outpost Talon, the fog was already rising. From the chopper window, it looked like the valley was boiling. The pilot didn't say a word the whole descent, just muttered something about keeping eyes off the ridge. The air was so thin it burned. Even before I stepped off the bird, I could feel it, that weight. It wasn't altitude sickness. It was the sense you'd crossed into somewhere you weren't supposed to be. The base sat like a concrete scar halfway up the mountain. An old Soviet Ulay station, converted by NATO. Half of it was rust, the other half was cameras pointing down into that endless fog. The commanding officer, Captain Reese, met me at the landing pad. No handshake, no small talk, just a clipboard with my name and a sealed envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. 8 rules. 1. When visibility drops below 50 meters, suspend all patrols. 2. Never follow movement in the fog unless confirmed by thermal. 3. If you see a silhouette standing still, don't blink. 4. The mist carries echoes. If you hear your name, don't answer. 5. Never stay outside past 0400. 6. The valley returns what it takes differently. 7. If you lose sight of your partner, stay still and count to 60. 8. When the siren sounds, shut every door and face the floor. I remember staring at it, waiting for him to smirk. He didn't. He just said, memorize them. If you break one, we dig another hole. The barracks were quiet. No laughter, no cards, just men whispering. A few bunks were empty, tags still hanging at the foot. That night, I met Corporal Diaz, our comms tech. He had dark rings under his eyes and a radio headset practically stitched to his skull. He said, Rule 4's the one that gets most guys. What happens if you answer? I asked. He gave me a look like he wasn't supposed to tell me. He said, you'll hear why soon enough. Just after 0200, the fog climbed higher. The siren didn't sound, meaning visibility hadn't hit critical yet, but everyone went silent anyway. The motion sensors along the ridge started pinging. 1 blip, then 3, then 12. We checked the thermals, nothing. Reese ordered lights out. The valley went black, except for the faint red glow of our sensors blinking through the fog. That's when I saw it, just for a heartbeat. A shape standing in the mist, upright, motionless, right at the 50-meter mark. It looked human, but wrong. The shoulders too wide, the arms hanging too low. Diaz whispered, don't blink. I didn't understand until I realized my eyes were burning. I hadn't blinked for almost a minute, and when I finally did, the figure was gone. The next morning, we found footprints leading from the perimeter fence toward the fog. Single set, size 11. They belonged to Private Keegan, the new kid who'd been posted on night watch. He was gone. Reese called it desertion, but when I looked at the prints again, my stomach turned. Every 5th step was deeper, like something heavier had taken over his weight. That night, I couldn't sleep. The fog didn't rise, but I still heard someone outside whisper my name. and when I checked the security feed, Keegan was standing at the fence, smiling, eyes open, lips moving. Keegan was dead. Everyone knew it. The report said missing in action, but when you see someone vanish in fog that dense, you don't expect them back. So when I saw him on the security feed that night, same uniform, same crooked grin, it didn't feel like a rescue. It felt like the valley was returning something. He stood motionless outside the perimeter fence, just beyond the red marker lights. Fog wrapped around him like it was holding him up. His eyes were open, but too bright, catching light that wasn't there. I thought maybe it was a glitch, old Soviet camera, static interference. But then he moved. Slow, deliberate steps toward the fence, and I swear his boots made no sound on the gravel. I called Reese. He didn't look surprised when I told him. He just said, "Rule 6, you remember it?" I did. The valley returns what it takes differently. He ordered lockdown protocol, but instead of scrambling the guards, he shut every light off, pitch black. We sat in silence, listening. At first, nothing. Then, a voice, soft, familiar. "Sergeant Hale," my name, outside the wall. It was Keegan's voice, exactly the same tone he'd used during roll call, but the breath was wrong. No echo, just pressure. Diaz whispered, "Don't answer, that's Rule 4. I didn't, but another voice did. Private Collins, he joined my squad last week, called back, "Keegan, that's you, man?" We all froze. The fog pressed against the glass like static in slow motion. Then movement. Something slammed against the perimeter door. Once, twice. No alarms, no breach detection. Just dull, wet thuds. Reese barked an order through the intercom. "Collins, stay put!" But Collins was already running toward the entrance. We heard the lock disengage, the sound of metal grinding against the cold. Diaz and I reached the corridor just as Collins opened the outer door. Fog rushed in, swallowing the hallway. We couldn't see him, only his flashlight beam flickering like a heartbeat. Then it cut out. Silence. Reese hit the siren. Rule 8. We dropped flat to the floor, eyes down. The siren's tone was low, almost like a groan through the mountain itself. Through the noise, something moved overhead, slow, dragging steps across the roof, too heavy for a man. When the siren stopped, the fog started to pull back. We waited another minute before moving. Collins was gone. The outer door was still open, hinges frozen with frost, and on the inside wall, someone or something had written in condensation, "Don't leave me here." That's when Reese finally said it out loud. "They're not ghosts, they're watchers. They study whoever answers." I asked, "Study for what?" He didn't respond, just looked out the window toward the valley. Down there, the fog churned in slow spirals, like something beneath it was breathing. And for a second, I thought I saw faces forming, hundreds, shifting, dissolving. That night, no one slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the word "here" appear behind my eyelids, like it had been burned into my vision. And somewhere below the base, deep in the valley, a faint rhythmic pulse echoed through the mountains, a sound like a heartbeat, but too slow to be human. By dawn, 3 new motion sensors had gone dark. When I went to check the cables, I found footprints again, fresh, leading inward this time, and beside them, something else. A trail of bare feet, smaller, like someone had brought a child up from the fog. The footprints led away from the perimeter, down toward the lower storage units, the ones no one used anymore. The snow there never melted, even when the sun hit it. That morning it was thick with tracks, boots, bare feet, drag marks, like something had moved through the valley and into the base under the cover of night. I radioed Reese, no response. The comms crackled with a low hum, almost rhythmic, like the same pulse I'd heard echoing through the valley last night. I followed the trail alone. Rule 2 was clear: never follow the fog alone. But whatever was happening now, it wasn't fog. It was already inside. When I reached Storage Unit 4B, the air smelled different, metal and cold, and something else, faintly sweet, like fruit left too long in the sun. The door was half open. Inside, frost coated everything, shimmering like glass dust. And there, in the middle of the room, were the prints. Small, perfectly formed bare feet, leading in circles. I stepped forward, slowly, rifle raised. The temperature dropped with each step, until I could see my breath hang still in the air. Then I heard it, a sound like whispering water. Not words, just a low ripple of voices, all out of sync. Like the same pulse I'd heard echoing through the valley last night. The prints ended at a storage crate. A single number was stenciled on its side, Unit 07. The top had been torn open from the inside. Inside, a small shape moved. For a second I thought it was a child. Pale skin, long limbs, hair clumped with frost. But when it turned toward me, I realized its face was blurred, like fog caught in the outline of a human head. Eyes where light should be, mouth open but not breathing. It tilted its head, mimicking me. Then it whispered my name, not spoke, whispered it inside my mind, the same way Keegan had outside the fence. I stumbled back, firing a round into the wall. The echo shattered the silence, and the thing dissolved, scattering into a thin mist that rushed past me, out into the corridor. I chased it. Every corridor light flickered as it passed, leaving streaks of frost behind. The trail led down to the sub-level, the one sealed with red warning signs, and that's where I found Reese. He was sitting in the dark, rifle on his knees, eyes wide open. "Close the door," he said. I did. He looked pale, exhausted. On the wall behind him was a map of the valley, hand-drawn. Thousands of lines marked the fog's movements over decades, each labeled with a date. The oldest was from 1974. The newest, this morning. He said, "They've been trying to leave. Every unit before us thought it was ghosts or enemies or something from the Cold War." He tapped one of the older notes, Operation Echo Vale. He said they were studying them. The Mistwalkers aren't from the valley. The valley contains them. I asked what they wanted. He didn't answer, just pointed at the window. Outside, fog was already climbing the ridge, fast. Reese stood up, pulling a binder from his desk labeled 8 Rules. He tossed it to me. He said, "Don't memorize them, understand them." He loaded his weapon. "They only follow patterns, don't give them one." Then the fog hit the glass, hard. The entire room dimmed like someone had pulled a curtain over the sun. Through the haze, I saw them, figures moving, too tall, too thin, faces flickering between shapes, and among them, something smaller, crouched, crawling on all fours, the child. Reese lifted his rifle, but before he could fire, the fog shattered the window. He vanished in the cold, swallowed in seconds. I slammed the bulkhead shut and ran for the armory. Behind me, I heard it whisper again, my name, but this time it wasn't alone. A chorus of voices joined in, each one echoing through the bass, repeating, layered, wrong.
When I reached the comms room, all screens flickered. Video feeds from every corridor showed silhouettes, fog silhouettes, copying us. Every soldier, every move, like the mist had learned how to mimic life. Then the screens froze. A single line appeared across all of them, in Russian. I translated it later.
At dawn, the fog thinned, not cleared, thinned, enough to make you think it was over, enough to make you step outside. That's what I did. The air was still bitter, sharp enough to sting your lungs, but the silence was worse. No engines, no chatter on comms, no sound of wreaths, just the wind scraping against metal, and something faint underneath it, like voices whispering from under the snow. I followed the trail to the perimeter fence. The footprints from last night were half buried now. Some led toward the valley, others stopped mid-stride, as if the person had just dissolved. Then I saw it, half buried in ice, something glinting, dog tags, my own name, Hale M, still warm against my fingers, like they hadn't been there long. That's when my radio crackled to life. Hale, return to station, the voice said. It sounded like command, but wrong. The tone was clipped, mechanical, just a fraction off. Then, do not approach the valley. You are being observed. The signal died. I looked down again. Next to the tags were boot prints, matching mine, and leading down the slope. Every instinct screamed to turn back. Rule 6, if you hear yourself on the radio, destroy it immediately. But the voice hadn't said my name the way I do. It said it like someone remembering a word they used to know. I kept going. The fog in the valley shimmered in waves, thick and pale blue at the base, pulsing like breath. Every time it pulsed, I felt warmth crawl up my arms, not from the air, from inside me. When I reached the first marker, I saw a sign, one we'd posted months ago. Danger, optical illusions likely. Only now the letters had shifted, the metal warped slightly, and when I blinked, it read something else. Danger, memory distortions active. That's when I realized the valley wasn't just showing us things, it was copying us. I pulled my camera from my pack and started recording. The fog shapes flickered in the distance, long, thin figures pacing between ridges. But every few seconds, the camera glitched, showing flashes of something else. Different uniforms, different years. Like every unit that ever came here was still walking the same patrol, looping forever. Then I saw him, Reese, or what looked like him. He stood by the frozen stream, staring straight up the slope. His body was stiff, movements jerky, but his eyes glowed faintly blue, like light trapped in frost. "Reese!" I shouted. He didn't move. Then his lips parted. A sound came out. My voice. "Turn around, Hale." I did. Behind me stood 3 figures, all in uniform, all me. Same height, same gear, same scar above the brow. One of them lifted his hand, holding my rifle, and aimed it at me. The fog pulsed, and suddenly I wasn't sure if I was the original anymore. I fired. The echo vanished into the valley like it was swallowed by air. When the fog cleared for half a second, they were gone, all 3. But my rifle was empty, and when I checked my camera footage, the screen showed something impossible. I wasn't alone the entire time. There were 2 of me standing side by side, moving in sync. The valley had been learning, and it had finally remembered enough
to become us. I ran back toward the base, my breath ragged, mind racing. When I crossed the fence line, I heard laughter, faint through the static on the comms. Children, the same sound from the storage unit. Inside the control room, all monitors were on, live feeds from external cameras. Everyone showed fog silhouettes approaching from all directions, hundreds of them, marching, copying our patrol routes perfectly. Then one by one the screens froze, each now showing a date in the corner. 1979, the year the original base was built, and a single message scrolled across all displays in white text: "The Valley does not forget." The generator sputtered, lights dimmed, and for a second I swore I could see shapes moving inside the reflection of the glass. Our old team photos, but in the photo, none of our faces were human anymore. At 300 hours, Central Command re-established contact. They ordered me to evacuate immediately and burn all records of the valley. But before I could respond, a second voice came through the same channel. It was my own voice, saying, "Stay. The fog isn't done remembering you yet."
At 000 hours, the radio crackled back to life. A human voice, crisp, official, blessedly real. "This is Central Command. Lieutenant Hale, confirm your position." I nearly dropped the handset. Static hissed between words, but I didn't care. I wasn't alone anymore. "Base Echo 107, I said. "We've had a containment breach. The fog." "Copy," they interrupted. "You are to evacuate immediately. Do not recover personnel or data drives. Destroy all logs and imaging systems before exfil." It was a standard blackout order. That meant one thing. Command knew something they weren't saying. But before I could ask, a second voice slid through the same channel. Softer, quieter, exactly my voice. It said, "Negative, Hale. Stay where you are. The fog isn't done remembering you yet." The line hissed, split, and both voices overlapped. Identical tone, identical phrasing, but out of sync by half a second. Then the connection died. I stared at the radio. One order told me to leave, the other told me to stay, and I didn't know which came first or which came from me. Outside, the motion sensors started tripping one by one. Each light blinked green to red, movement detected in every direction. When I switched to the thermal cams, the monitors filled with silhouettes, hundreds, but none gave off heat. They were standing in formation, our formation, facing the base. Rule 7. If the fog forms ranks, seal the bunker. It's not weather anymore. I slammed the locks on the blast doors and armed the thermite failsafe, but the metal was already frosting over from the inside. The air temperature was dropping by the second. Through the frost, I saw my reflection shift, not mimic, shift. The eyes blinked half a second late. The mouth didn't move when mine did. That's when the generator flickered and the emergency broadcast system powered on by itself. A voice came through the loudspeakers. "Hale, report." It was command again. Only this time, they were reading my field notes, word for word, even the entries I hadn't transmitted. Then, in the same even tone, they said, "Your copy has been debriefed. Proceed with self-termination." The fog pressed against the reinforced glass. It didn't just move, it pulsed, like it was breathing against the structure. I aimed my rifle at the hatch, and the metal dented inward. I opened fire. Rounds passed through the mist, but something inside it moved. Dark shapes rippled through, dragging their fingers across the walls. Everywhere they touched, frost bloomed like veins. Then my headset clicked again, and I froze. "Hale," it was Reese. His voice, perfect, calm. "I found an exit tunnel, North Ridge. You can make it out." I wanted to believe him, but there was a problem. Reese never made it to the North Ridge. He died 2 days ago. I'd zipped his bag shut myself. Still, I followed, because hope, even false hope, is louder than fear. The tunnel was narrow.
lined with old reinforcement beams. Frost coated everything like glass. My breath echoed in tight, rhythmic bursts. Halfway through, I saw something burned into the concrete. A mark, half symbol, half text. Project Mirror, 1959. It wasn't fog. It was reflection. Something they had buried here decades ago, a resonance that learned by remembering. I crawled faster. Ahead, pale light flickered, the surface, but when I reached the end, there was no hatch, just ice, thick, perfect, mirror clear. On the other side, a figure waited. Me. Same uniform, same eyes, except his breath didn't fog the glass. He raised his hand, and I felt mine move with it. I tried to pull back, but my body didn't respond. His voice came faintly through the ice. "You made it out, Hale. You can rest now." The glass cracked. Lines spread like lightning through frozen water, and behind him, I saw more. Hundreds of them. Copies, all waiting. The ice burst inward, light, blinding, white-blue, cold beyond thought. For a second, I felt weightless, then nothing. When I woke up, I was standing outside the base. The fog was gone, sky clear, no snow, and the comms was silent except for one automated transmission looping endlessly. Echo 17 reestablished. Personnel accounted for. 1. I looked down at my gloves. They weren't mine. Different fit, different wear, different names stitched into the fabric. M.H. Ale, only the H was backwards. 48 hours later, a new team arrived to relieve me. When I watched them approach through the security feed, I saw myself walking with them. And this time, the fog wasn't outside the base anymore. It was waiting inside.
They arrived 48 hours later. 6 soldiers in full winter gear, moving through the snow like ghosts. From the security feed, their formation was textbook perfect. Spacing, angles, rifles, all synchronized. Too synchronized. And walking in the middle of their line was me. Not someone who looked like me. Me. Same uniform, same gait, same exact scar on the jawline, even the same broken strap on the helmet mount. He looked up, right at the camera, and smiled. I froze. Every instinct I had screamed to raise the rifle, to defend the base, to run, but I didn't move. Because part of me, some buried, echoing part, knew exactly what was about to happen. Rule 8 echoed in my mind. When they come to relieve you, don't let them in. You're already replaced. But I'd ignored rules before, hadn't I? And maybe that's why I was still here. Or maybe that's exactly why I wasn't. The group reached the outer gate. The keypad lit up. They entered a code, not the new one I'd changed 2 days ago, the old one. The gate unlocked on the first try. The cameras flickered, static crawling across the screens like frost. When they cleared, there was only one figure on the feed, myself, standing inside the base, dripping melted frost onto the floor. I turned to the mirror on the far wall. My reflection lagged a half-second behind. When I blinked, it smiled. "Welcome back, Lieutenant," it said in my voice. "But this time, try not to remember." My body tensed. My breath came out slow and visible. The air temperature was dropping again. Through the glass, the fog was returning, rolling uphill, silent, deliberate, like it knew where to go. It didn't flow through cracks or vents this time. It came from the vents. Then the emergency lights cut out, and the PA system clicked on by itself. A voice came through, metallic, precise, too calm. Project Mirror re-engaged. Cycle complete. Containment stable. The base door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, and the thing wearing my face spoke again. "You're part of the feedback loop now," it whispered. "Every outpost needs an observer. Every observer needs a memory." I fired. Point blank.
The bullet hit glass behind it, passed through fog. No blood, no sound, just frost spreading across the walls. The mirror image flittered, and for a moment I saw something beneath the human layer, a structure of light and motion, like nerves made of static, reshaping every second. Then darkness. When the lights returned, I was sitting in the comms chair. Same position, same angle. The monitors were on standby, and the clock read 0500 hours April 2nd. But the last time I checked, it was March 29th. The logs were empty, wiped clean, except for one entry stamped automatically as Operator M. Hale, status, cycle reset. I looked out the window. The new team was gone. The fog had cleared again, and the valley below shimmered like heat haze, though the temperature read -20. Then the PA system spoke again, quietly, almost kindly. "Welcome to your post, Lieutenant. Follow the 8 rules. Report anomalies to command." A small printer on the desk started whirring. Paper slid out, fresh, still warm. It was a new rule sheet, identical to the one I got on my first day, except this time there was a 9th rule. Rule 9. If you realize you've been here before, you're not the observer anymore. You're what's being observed. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then, faintly, through the glass, a movement, a man standing outside the fog, watching, writing, and for the first time I wondered which one of us was real. Days later, a new drone flyover captured Outpost Talon fully intact, no signs of damage, but 12 heat signatures were detected inside. Only one responded to radio, and he claimed his name was Lieutenant Hale. All 12 of them.
Reverent storytelling with emotions. Command received the transmission at 0321 hours. A faint signal bouncing through atmospheric interference, repeating every 3 minutes. The source, Outpost Talon. But Talon had been classified as inactive for 7 months. At first, they thought it was a ghost signal, a technical echo left looping through the ionosphere, until the voice came through clearer on the 4th repetition. "This is Lieutenant M. Hale, requesting extraction. We've maintained observation protocols. The fog is moving again. Please respond." Command tried to reply. No acknowledgement. They checked the encryption signature. It matched Hale's ID, valid, verified, except Hale had been listed KIA 2 rotations ago. The general ordered a full transmission relay through the Arctic satellite net. They got video this time. Grainy, static-ridden, but visible. Hale sat at the comms desk. Pale, eyes sunken, frost forming in his hair. Behind him, on one of the monitors, another Hale sat at the same desk, a second feed showing the same room, slightly delayed. He said, "We're following all rules, all 9. They added another. He looked directly into the camera. "Do not watch the fog too long. It starts to remember you." Then, as if realizing something, he leaned closer, whispering, "I think the fog records us, every version, every mistake, and when it has enough, it sends one back." The feed cut to black. By dawn, every radar array within 100 miles registered false echoes, reflections that mimicked aircraft but moved at ground speed. Thermal drones launched from the nearest base showed Talon still standing, power active, mites on. But inside, 12 heat signatures, all identical in size and pattern. Command ordered visual confirmation.
When the drone's camera panned the main window, Hale looked out. All 12 of him. Each stood in a perfect row, every movement mirrored a fraction of a second apart, like a living reflection that couldn't quite sync. Their mouths opened at once, but the sound came late, layered, distorted. The observer becomes the observed. That's how the cycle continues. The drone's operator cut the feed, but the sound didn't stop. It kept playing through every open channel, even those disconnected from the network. The words looped, the tone deepened, until all that came through was one phrase repeated endlessly. Project Mirror, stable. 3 days later, Command received an encrypted directive. Top clearance only. Origin unknown. It contained a single paragraph. Outpost Talon has completed integration. The cycle is autonomous. Observation is no longer external. It is recursive. Do not interfere. The general ordered the valley quarantined. No approach within 50 miles. No further mention of Talon in official logs. But something didn't hold. Every night at 0321 hours, the base's emergency network lights flickered. Across installations thousands of miles apart, always the same frequency. And in the static, engineers began to hear patterns, not random, structured. Each burst of noise contained fragments of human speech, coordinates, names, brief exchanges, all in Hale's voice. Some say it wasn't him trying to escape. It was the fog sending out copies, fishing for listeners. Every reply was another hook in the chain, because soon the pattern spread across comms, across weather stations, across the entire northern relay system. They called it the broadcast loop. A closed circuit with no clear origin, a voice endlessly repeating, rewriting, learning from every response. Months later, a civilian weather satellite captured a new image of the valley. Where Talon once stood, the snow had melted into a perfect circle. Inside it, 12 dark figures, arranged evenly like clock markers, standing motionless in the ice. The fog never lifted. It pulsed like breath, and at the center of that breath, faint light patterns flickered, binary at first, then waveform. Someone realized the pattern matched the human EEG response to recognition, as if the fog was remembering something, or someone. Now, every Arctic transmission begins with a mandatory warning. If you receive an unlogged signal between 0300 and 0400 hours, do not respond. It is not a person. It is the system remembering itself. But even now, across the northern bases, some operators still listen. They swear they can hear him. A quiet voice whispering just beneath the static. Observation complete, awaiting next cycle. And if you turn up the volume high enough, you can hear the last thing he says before the feed cuts. If you're hearing this, it means you're next.